The worst attack against Jews since the Holocaust. And Kamala Harris is very concerned about anti-Muslim hate. Really? Also, the House leadership seems to be marching toward the impeachment of Joe Biden. We'll give you the latest there. And speaking of House leadership, remember Nancy Pelosi? She just got served with a criminal subpoena. What's that all about? We'll tell you. Coming up right now, it's a special live presentation brought to you by the Electronic Payments Coalition. Let's go. I remember just a week ago when Karine Jean-Pierre was asked about the rising tide of anti-Semitism in this country. We see it every single day. We've got plenty of new examples to show you later in today's program. And of course, she immediately pivoted and said, well, the real concern is anti-Muslim hate crimes. And we were like, what? The next day, she said, oh, I don't want to be misunderstood. We're very concerned about this as well. But are they? Because the Biden administration yesterday made a big announcement about their new executive branch commission on what concerns them the most right now in America.
Our nation was founded on the fundamental principle that all people should have the freedom to live, to worship, and to be without fear of violence or persecution. Every person has the right to live safe from violence, hate, and bigotry. And for those reasons and so many more, President Joe Biden and I have a duty not only to keep the people of our nation safe, but to condemn unequivocally and forcefully all forms of hate.
All right, so let me start here with all so far so good. Right up until that moment where she said all forms of hate. See, that's a bit of a dog whistle, right? When you ask Ilhan Omar or Rashida Tlaib or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or yesterday, Karine Jean-Pierre, when Peter Doocy asked the same question, do you find those students that are protesting and using anti-Semitic slogan and saying anti-Semitic slurs, do you find the people who are ripping down those posters of missing, kidnapped young children who are right now in the harrowing grasp of Hamas, do you condemn them as extremists? And Karine Jean-Pierre, what was the answer? We condemn all forms of hate. You see, they can't just isolate it. They can't just say, yes, this is anti-Semitism and it's wrong. So you see Kamala Harris here, and she says, our job is to call out hate. Our job is to protect people from these horrible hate crimes that they're facing. And you think, well, clearly she's talking about all the anti-Semitism we're seeing, right? Until that moment just now where she said all forms of hate. And now you wonder, oh, okay, where are we headed with this? Where are we headed with this?
Since we took office, President Biden and I have fought to uphold that duty. Over the past decade, America has seen a rise in attacks on houses of worship. So in response, we expanded funding to protect houses of worship from violence.
Hold on. Is she talking about the houses of worship like Catholic churches who have been attacked by pro-abortion enthusiasts and violent pro-abortion extremists after Roe v. Wade was struck down? Yeah, you've seen those stories. It's been about a year and a half now, and we've had no arrests in churches that were burned with graffiti all over it about abortion. Are those the houses of worship we're talking about? I don't think those are the houses of worship we're talking about.
After a surge in hate during the pandemic, in particular anti-Asian hate, President Biden signed the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act to improve the reporting of hate crimes and to ensure hate crimes are investigated quickly and thoroughly. Earlier this year, in response to an historic rise in anti-Semitic attacks, we also released the first national strategy to counter anti-Semitism.
Remember, that was before the attacks in Israel, right? So now, clearly, that national strategy to counter anti-Semitism isn't working because you're literally seeing adults, college students, radicals on the streets calling for the elimination of the state of Israel and using incredibly anti-Semitic phrases, chants, and slurs. So is this her opportunity to actually say, we got to do more. We got to be better? Well,
and to make clear, taking on hate is a national priority. President Biden and I held the first White House summit to address hate-fueled violence, and we brought together religious leaders, community leaders, and survivors to continue our work to keep all Americans safe. And today, we take another important step forward in our fight against hate. For years, Muslims in America and those perceived to be Muslim have endured a disproportionate number of hate-fueled attacks. As a result of the Hamas terrorist attack in Israel and the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, we have seen an uptick in anti-Palestinian, anti-Arab, anti-Semitic, and Islamophobic incidents.
To just throw anti-Semitic in there as the third out of four is kind of ridiculous, isn't it? Did you catch that?
A disproportionate number of hate-fueled attacks. As a result of the Hamas terrorist attack in Israel and the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, we have seen an uptick in anti-Palestinian, anti-Arab, anti-Semitic, and Islamophobic incidents.
Have we, though? I mean, have you? I haven't. Where? Where are the anti-Arab, anti-Palestinian, or Islamic attacks coming from? Have you seen them? Show your work. Shouldn't she give examples as she's making this address? One other quick thing. Kevin, can you make her big again? What's with this? What's with the hand clasp? Is she about to do the here is the cheaple, here's here's the chapel, here's the steeple thing with all the singing happy people? What is going on with the clasping hands? Is it me, or does she have like a white knuckle thing going on? Is she taking out all of her aggression by clasping her hands as tight as possible? It's making me very uncomfortable. I mean, I'll admit I use my hands quite a bit. I make hand gestures, and maybe she does too. And maybe they said, don't do hand gestures because that distracts people. Do you find this distracting? All right, let's get back to her here.
Across America, including the brutal attack of a Palestinian American woman who was Muslim and the killing of her 6-year-old son.
This is when she says including. All right, listen, this one incident that I'm aware of that happened outside of Chicago, which again, run by Democrats, duh. And it's a horrific crime that everyone has universally condemned. But so when she says we've seen this uptick, this outrageous uptick of anti-Muslim attacks, including, what do you mean including? That's the only one that I've seen. Meanwhile, we can list a whole lot of stuff that's happened. In fact, later in the program, we'll show you some of the things that are happening to Jewish Americans in this country.
A senseless act of violence that the Department of Justice is investigating as a hate crime. For so many people in our nation, the past few days and weeks have brought about all too familiar fears. Fears that they will be targeted, profiled, or attacked simply because of who they are, how they worship, or how they look. And so today, I am proud to announce the Biden-Harris administration will develop our nation's first national strategy to counter Islamophobia. This strategy will be a comprehensive and detailed plan.
Yeah, I'm done. Enough of her. All the way. Talk about tone deaf. We are literally just 4 weeks after the most horrific hate crime against Jews on this planet since the Holocaust. And this administration decides that this is the moment to call out the real threat, anti-Muslim hate. Now, I'm not in favor of anti-Muslim hate, but is that really the threat that we Americans are sensing and feeling and experiencing right now? We can't have people who are afraid that they're going to be targeted because of how they look and how they worship and their ethnicity. What do you mean afraid of that happening? It is, in fact, happening. We've seen it. And this video was met on social media with the exact kind of righteous anger and indignation it deserves. John Levine, who writes at the New York Post, points out that 57% of Muslims in America believe what Hamas did in Israel was justified. You think the real concern here is anti-Muslim sentiment and anti-Muslim hate? 57% of Muslims in America believe what Hamas did was justified. maybe there needs to be a little focus. Maybe Kamala Harris needs to deliver a speech from her desk, wherever the hell that is, and speak directly to the people who think Hamas was justified. Just a thought. And did she say earlier in this video that Muslim Americans are seeing a disproportionate amount of hate crimes going their way? Is that what she said? Because Gad Saad also points out a statistic. I know, math is hard, Kamala. But according to the FBI director, Jews, who make up 2.4% of our population, are the targets of 60% of hate crimes. That's why it's apparently important to fight Islamophobia, according to the White House. Disproportionate? I think that's the definition of disproportionate. 2.4% of the population are Jews, and they're experiencing 60% of the hate crimes. Do you ever think to yourself and wonder to yourself, looking back in history, during the Civil War, based on the values and principles that I hold now, would I have been on the right side of slavery? Would I have been an abolitionist? I think I would have been. Considering I'm a Republican and the Republican Party was founded on abolition, yeah, I think so. In the civil rights era, would I have been on the right side of voting rights and civil rights? And again, as a Republican, I think I would be, because it was the Democrats who blocked all those civil rights bills. During World War II, if I lived in Germany, would I have seen the Holocaust coming? Would I have seen the Nazis and the rise of anti-Semitism as a brutal, violent state policy? Would I have seen it coming, and would I have called it out? I'd like to think that I had, because I feel like I'm seeing it right now. We do have more coming up, so you can see exactly what I'm talking about, and what apparently Kamala Harris either isn't aware of or is willfully denying and even lying about. That's coming up in a moment. But first, a quick word from Electronic Payments Coalition. Did I mention them? I forgot to mention them earlier, didn't I? I'm not sure. But if I did, I'm going to mention them again. Electronic Payments Coalition wants you to inform yourself and educate yourself about what's being called the big box bill in the Senate right now. Now, this is basically going to add billions of dollars to the bottom line of mega retailers. Instead, they're basically trying to mandate credit card routing procedures. This is something they did over a decade ago, and it put a whole bunch of extra money into the pockets of the big corporations that run these big box stores. And it makes it a lot harder and more expensive for mom and pop shops and entrepreneurs to be able to meet the mandates. Essentially, Walmart and other big box retailers want to enjoy the benefits of accepting credit cards without having to pay for the privilege. And most businesses pay this interchange fee for every transaction to accept credit cards. This fee has remained stable for roughly a decade, right? Well, now it's going to be completely screwed up, thanks to Congress, thanks to mandates. And by the way, the funding goes towards popular credit card rewards programs right now. The money that goes towards them, that's going to dry up, because it's going to have to pay for all these extra mandates and extra fees. So goodbye to your credit card rewards programs. Listen, you need to tell your congressman and your senator to stop the big box bait and switch by going to, well, you guessed it, stopthebigboxbaitandswitch.com. That's the website where you get all the information. Stopthebigboxbaitandswitch.com. Thank you, Electronic Payments Coalition. All right, let's turn now to the so-called pro-Palestinian marches. I call them pro-Hamas marches, pro-Hamas Nazi marches, because when you scratch the surface of what the so-called pro-Palestinian crowd wants, it's the elimination of the Jewish state on this planet. How many Muslim countries are there, Muslim states, where Muslim is the dominant religion and part of the cultural makeup of that country? There's like 20 or 30 just in the Middle East, right? There's one country on the planet that is a Jewish state, and that's one too many for the people who are marching in our streets right now. And to prove it, a Jewish journalist went undercover and started talking. Look at him. He's got the mask on. He looks like a pro-Palestinian protester. So he started talking to them when their guard was down. Look what he learned.
I'm a Jew going undercover at a Free Palestine rally to see what they're really about.
Hey, how would you describe a Jew?
They're devils.
Who's at fault?
The Jews. The Jews. Always been a problem.
So if they do take Palestine, where do the 12 million Jews go?
Go to hell. Yeah, that's the literal slogan.
Free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
Okay, if we free Palestine, where do the Jews go?
Hey, go back to Brooklyn, bitch!
Shout out to Kanye. He was right.
You look undercover, pal. How do I know that you are...
That I'm not a Jew?
Get the fuck out of my face. Get out of my face.
The Hamas book, the action they've taken, it's not a terrorist attack.
I am queer for Palestine, yes.
What do you think about the argument when people are saying in Gaza they kill gay people?
It's very unsafe to be queer here, too.
But they're not actually killing gay people for being gay by law, right? The way it is in Gaza?
But why do we keep going back to, like, Gaza?
Why is there such a basis for them to have a homeland? Nobody else has a homeland.
Where are you from, if you don't mind me asking?
My family's from Afghanistan.
In Afghanistan, by the way, so that's a Muslim country, right?
Predominantly, yes.
So would you consider that your homeland?
Yes, so I guess I do have a claim over that, but you can't claim Israel.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, you know, it's easy to just write those people off as stupid and ignorant, which they are. But they're also using their ignorance to push this agenda and this message that apparently, if you've got an advanced degree from a liberal arts college, is supposed to be high-minded and intellectual. Oh, it's such a complex situation over there. This fundamental discussion that you just saw fleshed out, they have no right to a homeland. Really? Do you have a right to a homeland? Well, yes, but I'm different. Are you? I want to help you with this. If you're engaged in a debate with somebody on your Facebook page, or maybe with your liberal brother-in-law about this, and they say, well, you know, Israel was just a construct, 1948. They just carved this out. Western nations did it to help colonize that area, but they have no right to exist. They didn't have any history. Well, first of all, clearly there's a historical origin there. I've read the book. I know how it ends. But even if you want to stipulate, say, oh yeah, okay, 1948, yeah, just say this. Imagine a country that was just created, that didn't exist before, in 1948, that the UN recognized, and the only reason that it was created was to protect a group of religious individuals who all identify with the same religion, and they got their own nation state for that religion. Do they have a right to exist? And they're like, well, obviously you're talking about Israel. So obviously, no, they don't have a right to exist. And then you can say, oh, no, I'm sorry. I wasn't talking about Israel. I was talking about Pakistan. Because Pakistan was a construct. Pakistan was created. Pakistan was part of India. But there was a lot of hostilities between the Hindus and Muslims. Oh, and believe it or not, I know this sounds strange, and I don't want to show up on Kamala Harris's anti-free speech coalition there, looking after Muslim hate speech, but check your history. The tensions between Muslims in India and the Hindu in India turned into a whole lot of terror attacks against Hindus. Not pointing fingers about who was causing the terror attacks or anything. But the solution was to give the Muslims over there in that region their own nation state with their own borders. Same thing that happened for Israel. But for some reason, no one's calling for the removal of Pakistan from the map. There's only one country that needs to be removed. It happens to be the Jewish state. But no, there's no anti-Semitism there. None at all. Which brings us to another great expose from a journalist. Now, this one, again, these are just like so in the spirit of James O'Keefe, and I love it. Although you don't really have to go undercover. This guy is asking for people to sign a petition so that the Palestinians can have their own state, their own, state over in Israel. But then, and of course, people are on the street. Absolutely, I'll sign that petition. Where do I sign? Where do I sign? And then this guy says, before you sign, let me just, give you the fine print about what that means. And it's beautiful.
Doing a quick petition to help Hamas free Palestine. You're all in? All right. Oh, yeah, you're in? Easily. I just have to read terms and conditions just so you know what you're signing. Okay. By supporting Hamas freeing Palestine, you agree to the following. You agree that every Jew, Christian, and non-Muslim in the world must be slaughtered.
I don't know about that one.
You endorse making homosexuality punishable by jail or death.
Oh, no, I don't.
You don't agree with that? You believe Iran should use Palestinians as puppets to spread radical jihad and destroy the West? No?
No.
I'm glad I read the terms and agreements. You support strict Sharia law, which bans women from showing their knees, hair, playing sports in public, not being able to travel without a man's permission.
I'm sorry.
Not interested? Oh, okay. You want a terrorist group that beheads babies and rapes girls to replace only democracy in the Middle East?
Not sure that's something to support.
So if I sign, I agree with this.
Yes.
Maybe no.
No? Okay.
Oh, no, thank you.
No.
I don't support any of these two things that you just read to me, so then
Okay.
I won't be able to sign this then.
That's fair. Yeah, thanks for not signing. Yeah, all right.
Fantastic. Great. Brilliant, in fact, because when you say free Palestine and let Hamas and the Palestinians there, led by Hamas, because remember, the Palestinians who live in Gaza, given the opportunity to elect their government, they chose Hamas freely. They went out of their way and they continue to do so. Hamas then has their state there in replace of Israel, and that's what ends up happening because it's literally in the Hamas charter. Read it. That's what they support. So it's really cool to go out there and hold a banner and call for boycotts and march and start screaming about how Israel is an apartheid state, which it isn't, and that the Hamas-led Palestinians should have their own state. But as long as Hamas is the leadership, that's what you get in that state. I mean, my only other question is, especially for those college, because some of them were college students, did they spend that much time looking at the fine print on their student loan applications? I'm doubting they did. You know, I'm glad they read the fine print and they recognized exactly what they were getting into by signing on to, that sounds great. Yes, Hamas-led Palestinian state. Let's do it. And then the fine print actually, comes back to bite them. When you signed your student loan application, you promised that you would pay it back, right? You promised that you would actually have to be on the hook for all that, not me, not my fellow taxpayers. Yeah, that would have been nice. And did you notice there was a common thread to a lot of those people who were absolutely on board with signing that petition before they actually realized what the details were in that, the devil in those details. They all sort of had that look, right? That sort of edgy, hipster, trendy kind of intellectual, liberal Prague kind of thing that you see on your typical American college campus. Well, a good friend, you remember this guy? Oh, his video was fantastic when he started educating all of the queers for Palestine about what they were getting into. This is a Jewish gay comedian, pro-Israel, and he has another message for, the same kind of person we just described.
If there was a Hamas terrorist attack at a queer rave in Brooklyn or Berlin, there'd probably be a purple-haired girl in the center of the massacre watching all her friends be brutally murdered. It's okay, guys. Resistance is justified when people are occupied.
We know that purple-haired girl, don't we? We know that purple-haired girl so well. I mean, sometimes she's got blue hair. She bounces back and forth depending on what mood she's in. But boy, oh boy, do we know her. We see her all the time, don't we? I mean, everywhere. It's always the same attitude, the same look, the same speech cadence, whether it's on their TikTok or their Instagram, or as they're delivering your latte. We know exactly who this guy's talking about.
It's Israel's fault. Her best friend's being burned alive and mutilated. It's okay, Michaela. Take one for the team. She'd probably take a knife and start stabbing herself. I'm fighting apartheid. Maybe you should reserve your anger for the radical Islamic Nazi death cult that started this war by massacring 1,500 innocent people and doesn't give a shit about their own people and uses them as human shields. Oh, but that's a little scary to say, right? Because those are the people that'll actually come and kill you. I guess it's easier to just spew a bunch of anti-Semitic hate and say that Israel shouldn't exist and all those Jewish people, they had it coming, right? Well, you know what? You're not a peace-loving person. You're not a part of a resistance movement. What you are is the kid in elementary school who sides with the bully because he's too scared to stand up for himself. You are an intellectually dishonest coward, and everybody knows it. And the only reason no one says it to your face is because having a conversation with you is fucking insufferable.
Wow. I mean, it's hard to argue, isn't it? I really like and appreciate the work that he does because, frankly, humor is a great way to deliver these messages, and he delivers it with a lot of humor. But at the same time, these are serious times, and so if we can attract you with the humor and then hit you over the head with the reality, that's what's needed. I want to tell you what his name is. It's Daniel Ryan Spalding. Daniel Ryan Spalding, and apparently he does most of his stuff on Instagram. There you go. So you probably should follow him. He only has about 40. Oh no, he's got 168,000 followers. That's pretty good, but you can add to it, can't you? And while we're at it, in terms of following, thank you, by the way, for watching today. You know, we do this live in the 11-ish hour, sometimes a little before 11, sometimes at 11, something, ish. And we're live, so if you're commenting, we'll try to bring the best comments up onto the screen and interact with you. And otherwise, if you're watching this after the fact, join us live sometime. But thank you for sharing it across whatever social media platform you're watching us right now. Through the Town Hall family. All right, let's turn to Harvard now. But remember, if you're my age and you've got kids that are in high school and you're just like, oh wow, maybe my kid will get into Harvard, right? That's like a huge, like big bragging rights, right? You go to the cocktail party with the other parents. Oh, so where's Jim going? He's going to Cal State. Where's Jane going? She's going to Harvard. It's not really something to brag about anymore. Harvard is doing to their brand what Bud Light did to theirs. They refuse to speak out against the clear anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish hate on their campus. And here's the latest example. This is a Jewish student walking through the quad at Harvard in Cambridge. And look what these bullies do to this guy. I'm just going to let this play on here so you can watch it. This guy is just trying to walk and mind his own business and get away from him. They're impeding his progress. They're pushing him around. They're physically assaulting him and literally screaming shame at him. Shame, shame, shame. Shame for what? For being Jewish. Literally. This is at Harvard. And by the way, according to a whole lot of independent reporting, one of the people blocking him from walking freely on the campus that he pays good tuition to be at is named Ibrahim Barmal. He's the editor of the Harvard Law Review. The editor of the Harvard Law Review is engaged in this anti-Semitic bullying attack. And by the way, if editor of the Harvard Law Review sounds familiar, about 20 years ago, 30 years ago, the editor of the Harvard Law Review was a guy named Barack Obama. So that's at Harvard. Now, what about Columbia University?
My Jewish sisters and brothers and I are on the receiving end of death threats from our peers. Undergraduates who have filed reports about these incidents have been left with no emotional support, no feedback, and no consequences for the perpetrators of these hateful actions. As a result of this inaction, there are Jewish students who do not feel physically safe on campus. And yet the unequivocal tone of the student body and frankly, the administration prior to recent email statements is, no, this is not what anti-Semitism is. This is not what you are experiencing.
The Jews. Those words were said not here on Amsterdam, not on Broadway. Those words were said in Jerome Green Hall, Columbia's law school building. To be clear, I know this incident in fact occurred because it happened to me. I was the one who the anti-Semite chose to direct that message to. Yesterday, on a Cornell online discussion forum, someone threatened to slit the throats of Jews. Jewish students were scared to leave their rooms and the kosher dining hall was locked down. Last week, a mob of anti-Israel students trapped Jewish students in the Cooper Union Library. This is 2023. It is not 1942. And this is New York. It's not Nazi Europe. So Columbia, what will you do to ensure that we are not the next Cooper Union or Cornell?
Remember when at these Ivy League institutions and your favorite state university that has a great college football team that you're going to be rooting for this Saturday, remember when they were making headlines because their students needed safe spaces on campus, because people were using words they didn't like, because Ben Shapiro or Ann Coulter is coming to deliver a speech? They all wanted their safe spaces because words are violence. What happened to the safe spaces for the people are literally targeted by not just violent rhetoric, but by actual violence? Any safe spaces? Also, by the way, I've got several other videos like this that I could show you, but we're trying to condense this program. I could also show you the Cornell incidents that he just referenced, as well as another incident on University of Pennsylvania. So Cornell, University of Pennsylvania, Columbia, and Harvard. These are the elite of the elite institutions in this country. At least they used to be. They used to be. The Ivy League. And this is, and I'm sorry, Kamala Harris decides to spend her time last night delivering remarks to the nation about how Muslim Americans and those perceived to be Muslim are experiencing a disproportionate number of hate crimes and violent rhetoric. Really? Did you ever notice exactly where the priorities of this administration seems to lie? Every Democrat out there who says, oh, that Rashida Tlaib, the Ilhan Omar, AOC, those squad members, they're extremists, but they don't represent the core of the Democratic Party, the leadership in the Democratic Party. The core and leadership of the Democratic Party is literally the president and the vice president of the United States, and they just threw down with Rashida Tlaib. Yesterday, in the House of Representatives, a remarkable and strange announcement was made by the House clerk.
This is to notify you formally, pursuant to Rule 8 of the Rules of the House of Representatives, that I, the Honorable Nancy Pelosi, Speaker Emerita and U.S. Representative for the 11th Congressional District of California, have been served with third-party subpoenas from the prosecution and the defendant to produce documents in a criminal case in the United States District Court for the Northern District of California.
What? I'm sorry. Nancy Pelosi received a criminal subpoena to produce documents in a criminal case in Northern California? What is that all about? I love that there's a rule in the House that this has to be revealed publicly. But could we get some explanation, please? No, you can't. They're not commenting. They're not delivering any more information about this. Jesse Waters, last night on Fox News, began the speculation.
So Nancy Pelosi is being subpoenaed in a criminal case. What criminal case? That person who isn't Nancy Pelosi wouldn't say. Could it be related to the hammer attack on her husband, Paulie P? Because that trial starts next week. Does it have something to do with her husband's DUI? Or is there something behind door number 3? Maybe a little insider trading. The son's shady business dealings. We don't know. We asked Pelosi's office to explain. They said no comment. But subpoenas aren't nothing, especially in a criminal case. It suggests there's something Nancy does not want to hand over voluntarily. You don't subpoena the willing.
Yeah, that is correct. And so it really does open up a lot of questions. Now, I love the fact that there are multiple criminal incidents that we already know of that Nancy Pelosi is connected to. Her husband, of course, was the victim of that hammer attack. You remember that strange scene in his front door with an intruder and underwear and the hammer. Why would one of her financial documents be needed in that criminal case? And yes, the drunk driving by her aforementioned husband, driving drunk in Napa Valley after, I'm sure, just a light wine tasting, checking out a little Pinot, right? But again, financial documents, why would that be needed in that criminal case? I mean, the speculation can go on and on and on. Strangely, though, there's a whole lot of media outlets who were ignoring this. You know the ones. The broadcast networks and, well, all the cable networks except this one. I would think that the top-ranking Democrat in the House, and I know Hakeem Jeffries is the minority leader. Oh, sure he is. Nancy's in charge of the Democrats still. And you would think that the most powerful Democrat in the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, facing a criminal subpoena for her financial records would probably make news somewhere. Let's show you the big blockbuster CNN report on this, shall we? There is none. Sorry. But let's move from former House leadership to the current House leadership. Our pal Sean Hannity had Jason Smith, chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, who's been investigating the Hunter Biden IRS crimes. James Comer, chairman of the Oversight Committee, who's been looking at all of the Hunter Biden crimes. Jim Jordan, chairman of the Judiciary Committee. He's the one without the jacket. You know, Jim. He's looking into not only the Hunter Biden crimes, but also, more importantly, the obstruction of justice and cover-up in the Justice Department and the weaponization of the Justice Department against American citizens. And finally, the newly crowned Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. All four of them were on Hannity yesterday. And, well, I want you to watch a little bit of it. Look what I did. Why did I do that? Hang on. All four of them were on Hannity yesterday, and I want you to see a little bit of it.
Are we really, this is an impeachment inquiry, Mr. Speaker. Is this leading to impeachment? Do you believe that the evidence that they're accumulating in these three committees is now leading to the ultimate impeachment in the House of Representatives of Joe Biden?
Next to the declaration of war, impeachment is probably the most serious power that Congress has. We do not wield it for political purposes, but we are following the truth where it leads. And you hear the evidence, you hear this laid out and summarized. Of course, you know there's much more than what we're able to do in one segment. We're going to follow the truth where it leads because we have a constitutional responsibility to do so. We're on it. And we're going to continue.
Let me scan the room. How many of you think that that's where this is headed? Please raise your hand. Wow. The whole room. Thank you all. I appreciate you being with us.
That's an astounding moment there. You can see the people in the audience there were actually members of the House of Representatives. How many do you believe that this is all leading to the impeachment of the President of the United States? And every hand went up. You know why? Because it's obvious. Because the evidence is so clear. Because not only did Joe Biden lie about his knowledge of his son's business activities and continue to lie, but all the hallmarks of a Washington, D.C. scandal are embodied in the Hunter Biden, James Biden, Joe Biden scandal that those four men are investigating. Number one, you've got your crime. That would be selling access to hostile foreign nations to get close to the Vice President of the United States and possibly even affect foreign policy on behalf of the people buying access. But let me pause there for a moment. You don't actually have to change policy to accommodate Ukraine or Kazakhstan or China or Russia, the people who were paying the Biden family. You don't actually have to change policy or prove the policy was modified for it to be against the law to sell access to those countries. But it appears the policy was changed on behalf of them as well, certainly with Ukraine, right? So that's your crime. And also add to that tax fraud and money laundering and playing a shell game with money so that taxes don't have to be paid. See, yesterday we talked about this new revelation that Joe Biden received a $40,000 check in addition to a previous $200,000 check from his brother. And on the check, it said loan repayment. Do you know why people receive cash in a nefarious way through financial schemes and refer to it as a loan payment? Do you know why? Because technically, loan repayments are not taxable income. So if there was a loan that Joe Biden gave, which should be really easy to clear up, he should be able to show the bank transactions of Joe Biden's brother getting the loan in the first place, and maybe even some documentation laying out the terms of the loan. Legally, you're supposed to do that. It should be really easy to prove. If it was a loan, then when he gets that money back, he doesn't have to claim it as income and pay taxes on it. But if he gets that money and it's not actually repayment for a loan, he's supposed to pay taxes on that money. And if he didn't pay taxes on that money, that's also a crime. I would call it a high crime, at the very least a misdemeanor. So you've got all those crimes: selling access, tax fraud, shell corporations, not claiming the income on your taxes. So there's your crime. The next step you have is the cover-up and then the obstruction of justice. The cover-up and the obstruction of justice, of course, would be hiding all of these emails. Joe Biden, 82,000 pages of emails when he was a vice president using a fake name so it couldn't be discovered on FOIA requests. And obstruction of justice. You've got a U.S. attorney who blocked the prosecution of Hunter Biden to accommodate the big guy. Crime, cover-up, obstruction of justice. We've seen it all play out, and we've seen the evidence. And you just saw leading members of the House of Representatives, the Republican majority, say, yep, this is leading to impeachment. Of course it is. Buckle up. Next year, you're going to want to be locked in on everything we do at Town Hall across all of our sites: townhall.com, hotair.com, redstate.com, pjmedia.com, twitchy.com, bearingarms.com. Because next year, we've got a presidential election, we've got criminal trials of Donald Trump, and we've got an impeachment of the President of the United States, and probably the impeachment of the Secretary of Homeland Security, and maybe even the Attorney General. And I assure you, you're not going to get any kind of coverage on your major newspapers, your broadcast networks, and really on most of the cable networks as well. The only kind of coverage you want is what you get right here. And we'll be there with you every single day. In fact, now's a good time to remind you that you could be a VIP member of Town Hall. Not only does it help us with our coverage and keep us free from the oligarchs and big tech from censoring us, but it also gives you access to content that isn't available to non-VIP members, and you get an ad-free experience on all of our sites. So if you want to become a VIP member, as you can see right there, just click on the VIP tabs on any of our sites and use the code word Israel, and you'll get 50% off today. Hey, thanks for watching today, whether you're watching live or whether you're watching on the replay. We really appreciate it. Thanks for all your support, your likes, your subscribes, your follows, your shares, whatever it is you're doing out there. We appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.